Welcome to another edition of Mortgage Talks. I'm your host, Adam Hires. We have an awesome guest on here, author, and just extraordinary guy, and you're going to learn a lot. So you're not going to just hear me today. I know that really disappoints everybody, and you're like, oh my gosh, I just want to hear him talk for forever. But we have a great guest on here. Listen up. I'm only bringing the best of the best out, and this and our guest today is no exception. So you all know I'm going for my journey from 0 to 150, zilch, nothing, no context, nothing else, into a new state and planting. So I want to continue to share this journey with you. And that way, listen, if you are doing 5 loans a month, you're doing 10 loans a month, you want to do 20, you want to do 30, you want to change states, whatever it be, you can grow. You can say, hey, how can I now take what I do and grow? Maybe you're a new mortgage loan officer. You just haven't grown yet. Just apply this to what you're doing now. This is the naked truth. This is not the ivory tower. A lot of people are just in this ivory tower of, oh my gosh, like, again, I walked uphill both ways and all this other stuff that's going on. And people are just, in theory, and there's a lot of people out there in theory, this is going to work out, mortgage loan officer, I could just crush it. And they're trying to tell you how to do it. And they haven't ever, done a loan or really been a top in anything they do. But they're trying to tell you, this is the raw, naked truth. Okay. So, you all know I'm trying to go this 150. I got a referral this week from a Georgia agent. So it was a big victory. It was like, okay, good. We got this referral. Working on him, should be pre-approved and all that. We're working on some documents. So that's a great thing. We know that everything's like a 90-day burn. So I just got here, got sick got sick. I had all these challenges, right? Moved states, new home, all this stuff. So I'm just really starting to do the things I need to do to really grow. It's a 90-day burn. As our guest will probably tell you, it's some of these relationships are not going to happen overnight. So it's going to take a second. So all this foundation I'm doing right now is going to start really paying off. So having some really great conversations with people. I'm putting on another powerful event in Georgia here next month to help not only real estate agents, but other people grow their business more in 12 weeks than they normally do in 12 months. So that is obviously designed to have a networking event and also obviously help them grow. And then the key is in the follow-up. So the first time I did an event, I was able to have 14 people to follow up on. And there's been a really good conversations out of that. There's different people that said, hey, I'm definitely sending you business. Had a great follow-up today with one of the real estate agents. And she's like, oh yeah, I got one today. And I told her, the client, you have to call my man, Adam Hires, which was great. So things are coming out of that already. I'm setting appointments in Georgia here. And, one thing I did too is ask for local help. So, I was talking earlier to my guest about videographer. I didn't just go, hey, I'm just going to private message people, which I did that as well. I'm going to ask online, like, who's a good videographer? And so one of the things that came out of that is I had people reach out to me, say directly, and then some people comment. And in one of the referrals was from this videographer that's also attached to a real estate agent. Beautiful thing, right? So I see that and when I say attached, his wife's a real estate agent. Pretty beautiful thing. So she actually reaches out to me and says, hey, here's my husband's info. Because a real estate agent that was in my powerful event tagged her. So see how this is kind of webbing, right? Do the event, have the conversations, do the follow-up. I put a post out. They tag someone in that, which is a real estate agent that has a videographer for a husband. So she reaches out to me. Of course, I reach out to him, But I also look, what's her number? Find her number and call her. Have a great conversation with her. Guess what? I have an appointment for next Thursday with her. Great conversation. Gonna have him come in, have a conversation with him, see how this all webs. So think about that. So put out the local help finder. That's a really good thing to do. I'm looking to hire. I got to hire somebody else because listen, we're going to throw down stuff. If you're out there and you're not growing, you probably got to hire somebody, right? And I'm getting last week's podcast was great. I'm getting a video sales letter together with Dallas Hardcastle. I'm telling you, if you're on the fence that guy is phenomenal. Video sales letter, because that is a piece of real estate that you can have, video sales lander that is moving the needle and helping people. So I can use that in so many different areas, because a lot of people are going to your site and not doing anything, not making action. Like my site right now, hiresloans.com, is just a redirect for Sierra Pacific Mortgage, and there's nothing on there that's moving the needle. I can't share that with a real estate agent and go, hey, you can be wild by this. I can't share that with a client and be wild by that. But when the video sales letter hits on exactly what we're trying to tell people, the pain points that they have, that's going to move the needle. And guess what, guys and girls? Spend the money to get the real help on the people that can really have the video dialed in. So we're getting that out. We're also putting out a hype video that we're working on with 42 lines creative for the powerful event. So a lot of big things that are coming to fruition. And like, listen, guys and girls, go out there, keep making the connections, keep figuring out a better way to do it. And today's guest is on that same line, because this guy has a podcast named Hypnotic Language Hacks, and he will hypnotize us today by his great dialogue. He's doing big time stuff. He's got the book Work Smart Business. That's just one of his books. You can find it on Amazon. The guy is very sharp. He's got sales dialogue it's just coming out his ears. And there's so much more that he can share. So Jason Linett, how you doing, brother?
Hey, Adam, so good to be here. Thanks for sharing everything that you're doing. I love that transparency model, as well as just showing what's working right now. So good on you for that.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So Jason, tell us a little bit about yourself. What's driving you, what's going on in your business. And just tell us the skinny.
Sure. So I began the big part of my career primarily as, of all things, a hypnotist. So working with clients for personal change, overcoming a fear, changing a set of behaviors. And the sort of superhero element in the back may have come about from growing up in a family where everybody was an entrepreneur. So not that they were in the same industry, they were photographers, but it was instead from this mindset that it didn't have to be this challenge to start a business, because I grew up seeing people do that. So over time, in my rather little micro niche community of hypnotists, becoming the go-to guy in terms of teaching people how to run their businesses. And as it is the 21st century, our clients tend to Google us. And what happened over time is really the excellent model of listening to my clients, that they were coming in for business-related fears. So whether it was the fear of starting up, the fear of scaling up, the standard fear of public speaking, which surprisingly is just as much of an issue right now as everyone's in front of a webcam, because there aren't really big conference gatherings of 3,000 people right now. So what was happening was that my clients were wanting more of the look at my presentation, look at my sales writing. And that's what's morphed into now everything I do in terms of business influence systems, the Hypnotic Language Hacks podcast, for people that your business can change people's lives, yet you don't yet have the right words to inspire them to take action. So it's about using models of ethical influence and positive persuasion to put your messaging in the right order so that people want more from you even before you make that offer.
I love it. I love it. I mean, that's the video sales letter, right? Too, is, having great scripting, great things that moving people already beforehand. Right. And I think there's, and I love what you said. It's not about trickery, right? It's not about, fooling somebody. It's really getting to where they need to be anyway. But I think I always talk about sales is such a great love language, because
Yeah.
like, think about this, like if you selling somebody to take action to eat better, and it's going to keep them from dying from diabetes or something, right? Like that is a love language. We're inspiring people to take action before something catastrophic happens, or their business fails, or something. And I think that's I think that's such a love language to help people. And I love that you're not like, hey, listen, it's not trickery. It's not, because the old sales ways are just like closing. It's like, and just like my guest last week is like, it's about opening the conversation and opening them to make their own decision and arrive at their pace, right?
Well, it's that reality that all communication is influential. We're always communicating and we're always persuading by nature of that. Even if it's as simple as, what do you want to order for dinner tonight?
Yeah.
Even if it's as simple as, what specific plans are we making? So if we're always influencing by nature of communication, my sort of opinion on that is we might as well be doing it effectively. So I always crack the joke, and this is not meant to be towards any specific platform, but why are most businesses on social media? And the reason why is that they think they should be, as opposed to
Right.
having a specific strategy. So something that you had referenced here before we jumped on together around interacting with people as if they already knew you. Well, we can actually start to craft that as something that you're doing here by becoming that hub of communication, by sharing that story with the people who are out there listening. So by the time they reach out to you, they already have that know, like, and trust factor. And it doesn't have to be this hard sales process. It's where, sales and business often gets that bad rap because of folks who do it badly, as opposed to, we're always educating and informing. And again, if we can just sort of layer into that process the appropriate action steps for people to take, that's where we can provide an even greater service by actually serving them as our clients.
Yeah, that's well said. I don't. Sometimes, my guests say things so eloquently and so on point, and I'm just trying to gather it up. I'm like, I don't. I'm fully listening without trying to figure out the next question. I tell you what, that was
That's where I have
deep.
to
That was
crack the
good.
joke. I mean, you should really record these. That's a good.
Right. Right. Exactly. I tell you what, I go back through these podcasts and I'm like, wow, because I listen to them every time. Man, wow, that's really good. And this will be one of them, I'm sure,
Well, I
for
think
sure.
right there, you hit on something there in the theme of that, of bringing people into something as opposed to just selling them something.
Mm-hmm.
That by doing it of that nature, by bringing people into an experience, what's happening there is we're indirectly building that rapport. People are then unconsciously cheering you on to go, here's the guy who's just suddenly moved to a brand new area and he's going to go to 150 in the course of 1 year. One part of the mind is perhaps coaching you on, encouraging you. The other part is kind of, and the second part may sound like a negative, but it's every reason why they're going to keep listening as they're
Right.
going, is he really going to pull this off? Let's see where this
Right.
goes. But it's by building that relationship that now they're invested. Now there's this emotional buy-in into it, which is where if we simply in our marketing and our persuasive copy, whatever we write, change the language instead from I sell this program, I offer this course, to the phrasing of either I'm on a mission to, or I believe that. By using those two phrases, I'm on a mission to, or that I believe that, we're now taking our offer and turning it into something much bigger and greater. So, for example, in one of my markets last year, many people were in a panic that suddenly they couldn't do one-to-one in-person services. And as somebody who had already been serving and teaching clients and teaching courses online for a bunch of years, it became every opportunity to better serve that audience by going, hey, let's put this program out twice a week. Let me put out some free tutorials in terms of exactly how to make this work. And yes, one side effect is I've got a whole folder inside of my email of about 150 messages of people saying, you saved my business. Thank you. The other part of it, and this was not the immediate goal of doing so, is that of practically doubling the size of the business in the course of 1 year. So ask yourself, what does this audience need? What can I provide? And it's where inside of that, we just have to layer in a few polite offers to say, hey, for more like this, check out, and keep it
Yeah.
very non-salesy, keep it very much on the sort of informing wavelength of communication.
Right.
And what happens is people are going to then naturally sell themselves into what we do. So again, bring it into the language of I'm on a mission too, or I believe that. And it sort of changes the dynamic. Everyone else is now trying to sell them on something. You're the one showing people how to make this happen. You're the one who's bringing people into that bigger movement as a result.
Yeah, that's fire right there, because absolutely, you're hitting on so many things that I hit on all the time of like I talk about all the time, like where people are just like, they say, like, I sold another home, or I did it on loans. Like, nobody really cares about that. It's a whole Captain Nobody Cares. And it's again, I always go back to Jim Carrey of the Sonic movie. He's like, Captain Nobody Cares, and nobody cares, but they care about their own story, right? They care about how they feel like in I think that's what you're saying. Like they're almost transforming into what I'm doing, and that's they're. Now it's like they're in it, right? They're in the story, and they got to see the story with the, not just you're doing it, but it's like they're encapsulated inside the story. And I think that's where people move. That's when you move the needle. So, and
Well, I mean, everything you just said there around story, it's where to look at what do our stories serve. A big part of hypnotic language is that of metaphor and storytelling. So, for example, I can tell the story of here's someone who bought into my program. We did a few calls together and his business is up. And again, that fits into that Captain Who Cares, which, by the way, if you're going to reference obscure movie quotes, game on, buckle up. We're about to go there even stronger. Greatest business lesson I ever learned came from watching The Simpsons. I'm sure we're going to hit that story in a couple of moments. But to look at this guy who he was a contractor, and the nature of his business was that he had actually been more the employee for a bunch of years as this, really skilled technician with tools and carpentry and all of that. And only because his best friend, who had been running that contracting company, basically announced, hey, I'm retiring. And for the first part ever, he goes, oh, I guess I could do this on my own now, which he's out there and he's excelling wonderfully at this. The nature of that abrupt shift, though, was that he did not have the fully built out website. He did not have all the amazing assets. He didn't have the search engine placement yet. So he did recognize that at least the phone was ringing, yet in most cases, he was like the fourth or fifth one that they would call. So if he kind of fit into the same call process of every other contractor they could speak to, he was only then a commodity. If he could change the dynamic of the communication even before the conversation began, he immediately set himself apart. There's a language pattern that I teach called a complex equivalence, which allows you to let one piece of information become the meaning of another piece of information. And the sort of mathematical formula of this is the fact that X means that Y. So, hey, before we talk about your project, the fact that you're calling me, the fact that you've already got all these other estimates probably means that you're getting a little bit more anxious to get the job done, right? And you get a yes on that. And the next statement was, so before we even discuss your project, I just want to give you a heads up. That's usually about a 1-day job. I have this coming Monday wide open. So just have that in the back of your mind, though. Tell me about your project. So what he had done in that little bit of what we call a pre-frame was he had injected a bit of immediacy and convenience into that conversation, to which he knew the going rates in that area. He was basically the same price of just about everyone else. He did have a whole, sort of resume of photos he could share in terms of projects. But by changing that opening 10 to 15 seconds of that conversation, he was able to take that pattern, stick it in there in such a way that now the immediacy and convenience was connected to him. So by the time he got to that offer, yes, they heard it was pretty much in line with everything else they had already heard, yet he had connected that immediacy and convenience to him, and very often he was now getting the job.
Oh wow, yeah, that is yeah, you, you can tell that you study this, right? Like I love,
Well, I'm flashing to what you do as a mortgage broker, that
yeah,
being self-employed,
yeah,
that often does make it a little bit of a fun adventure to get a loan. So here I was years ago buying, and this is not the sexy sports car story. There I was buying a 4-year-old used Scion XB, a car they don't even make anymore. And there were two of them. They're hard to find used, or they were hard to find
yeah,
used. It's even harder now, I'm sure. But here I was at two different lots, and the one who goes, "Oh, you're self-employed. Do you have a laptop? Yeah, bring it with you when you come in because we can do the financing faster if you have all your files with you." I'm like, sold. So by changing the story in someone's mind, by again dropping the right phrases at the right time, we
Mhm.
expedite that sales process. And only again at the end of the story,
Right.
if we can absolutely serve that person, please only use your powers for good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell you, sales is sales and the real high level sales and the way it should be done is always just intriguing because it is that psychology and framework and because it's always something you can work on, right? Like I've had, my coaching for Dallas, for example, like he was coaching me and I, record the call, send it to me, right? And there's always things. There's always, it's like, yeah, you didn't get enough in their pain point here. You didn't like, you could have framed it here. You could have set up the conversation in the first 15 seconds differently here. And there's all these nuances that can lead to a sale or just be another person. And I hope the listeners, if you're a mortgage loan officer, a real estate agent, or insurance agent, like those three things, right? Like there's a billion of us, right? And so if you can change just little nuances about your sales dialogue and get you moving the needle right off the bat, I think is important. What I would say, and I want to get your opinion on this, is I think the number one thing that somebody needs to do, in the mind shift of just when you're speaking to somebody or your sales dialogue is just it's it, you're oh, the the job of communication is the response it elicits, right? So always just keep in mind, like, what is that saying to someone? Frame it to where you feel like you're that person, and what responses it elicit. I think is for me been the biggest thing is continue to realize, like, that's I'm not just speaking to speak because I know you heard it. We all hear it in sales. It's like, my cousin Bob, man, he would be the best salesperson in the world. He talks to everybody. It's like, that's actually not sales. That's not true, because like when I used to run Ashley Furniture, I'd a lot of salespeople could walk everybody around the floor talking the whole way and they just walk out the door, right? Like so that's not what sales is. It's not just about talking all the time. It's about listening. It's about the right framework, saying the key words and the framing and stuff like that. So what would that's my biggest thing is just having that intentionality of what response it elicits. But
Yeah, let me
if you're
throw that
saying,
into a
what would you say? Yeah.
context, Let me throw that in context here. That very often, yes, this is coming from the guy who does the Hypnotic Language Hacks
Mhm.
podcast. This is coming from someone who, words and patterns are a big part of what I teach and even the applications. Though, even to look at the program that I do, Business Influence Systems, the first phase
Mhm.
has to be that of emotional intelligence, which let's
Mhm.
put that into the category of state management of
Yeah.
how we carry ourselves,
Mhm.
which would not just be in terms of turning on the charisma, turning on the charm. No, it's that of building that sort of, unstoppable confidence and this resilience within ourselves that we can turn that on purpose, where every interaction isn't going to go exactly as planned. And I always smirk at the phrase of, if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life, to which I would add an extra word, mostly.
Right.
Some days it is work. And, to leave the extraneous things off to the side as we're dealing with, the clients and
Yeah.
what they're needing. But only then the second phase, once we've done that sort of state management within ourselves, is exactly what you just said, of that of what I call calibration. So the ability to build that dynamic rapport with others, the ability to listen, and there's some cool shortcuts to this that I teach. One would be just the power of ambiguity, that we can say even more by saying less. So let me put this into the context of the mortgage industry for a moment, which would be that, we can offer, and I'm going to speak in generalities because I'm not going to pretend I know everything about what you do. Yet, as you consider the details of this loan package and this different rate, think about the changes that will make in your finances. And the person begins to nod a little bit as you just did there. And you then follow it up with a question of, what would that mean for you? So the power of ambiguous words, like think about the changes that would create, think about the adjustments that would help you to create, think about the projects that would help you to do a little bit sooner. And as soon as we say something of that nature, what we're looking for is to observe that person and see if that hit in some context. And then a simple follow up question: what would that be for you? And what this does is it invites someone in a very conversational, natural way to feed us what their buying decisions are, to feed us what their decision choices ought to be. So I'd be very open that in the course of the next couple of months, we're completely jumping ship, moving from the state of Virginia down to Florida. And immediately we were connected with the agent who we're going to be working with down there, because he goes, "What's after this home purchase?" And I went, "Oh, you're good." Because then it was opening up the dynamic of, we're okay having a slightly higher mortgage payment because we want to have some of the extra cash from our previous sale to get something to become like an Airbnb property, and then block out the dates that we want when we want to hit the beach.
Yeah.
So to look at, again, asking the question of what's after this, the power of asking something without saying, "Oh, you want this." That being said, you will come to know in your own industry the sort of, as I nickname them, the appropriate mind read moments. I've seen a couple of thousand people over the years as a hypnotist, helping them to quit smoking. And I often become the hero in that story, not just because I've helped them, but also to go, "Hey, by the time we end up having this conversation, a few things are very often true. About maybe 2/3 of them are just ritual now, and maybe a third of them you're maybe enjoying, but even half of those you're snuffing out before you've finished it, right?" And they go, "How did you know that?" I'm like, "I've done this a couple of times." So we start to notice some of those ins and outs of our industry. But again, the power of the ambiguity. But take note, back to that original point, it doesn't come around the fancy closing strategies and the clever phrases until we've built that sort of state management within ourselves. And exactly what you just said there, Adam, that of connecting with the other person, seeing where they are in that sales conversation first.
I love that. I tell you, I wish you could teach that to every CPA. Right, my biggest annoyance, right? CPAs never ask that question to their clients. Just get you. Like, could you ask, like, what's next? We're buying a home this next year. Well, you probably don't want to write off every single thing you can, because you're not going to be able to buy a home. So if they would just ask that question, right, like, what's next, and what's that mean to you, and all that. I think that dialogue you're talking about could for them could really create a lot more value. I love it. I love it. So, what I mean, so I'm doing this journey from 0 to 150 loans, and in a new state, and obviously you're a new state, and you're helping people grow, and so we want to ask you, like, if you or me, you drop a new state as a mortgage loan officer, and you don't have to have everything there is to know about being a mortgage loan officer, but I love to have different perspectives, and hopefully the audience can go, okay, how can I plug that in? Like, what would be 3 things that you would do to grow in a new state?
Yeah. So the first one I've already hinted at, that of bringing people into a movement, that as you're changing that conversation, because there's already in any industry, there's sort of the common shared enemy, which usually isn't even a person, it's a concept.
Okay.
That perhaps here's people who are being taken advantage of on specific parts of loans, specific things they should be aware of in terms of like closing costs, different ways of going about the process. So by becoming that person is bringing people into a movement. And within our own industries, you can better identify what those are than I could. But to say, I'm on a mission to help people to avoid XYZ. Yet by doing that, everyone else now becomes the vendor. Everyone else becomes now the person trying to sell them something. You are now positioned as the advocate by using that I'm on a mission too, or I believe that languaging. So I tend to say we start with that because immediately that's what sets us apart. In a market, which especially for what you do, people can look at as a commodity. Oh, I already go through this bank. I might as well just use them. Oh, I used this person last time, but to see that there's some level of advocacy inside of what we do, that I'm on a mission to help fill in the blank. That's going to start to change some of that dynamic.
So I could use that not only with clients, but also with, like, say, real estate partners. New real estate partners, right? I'm on a mission, and really that stick out with them, right? To where all of a sudden they do feel a part of that movement, right? Let me get your opinion on this. If I'm talking to your real estate agent, I'm saying I'm mission to do this X, Y, to do 150 loans a year here, but I'm in a mission to help clients, whatever, blah, 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 fill in the blank, we don't have to go through all that. But if I'm having those languaging to a real estate partner, to a referral partner, that's going to move the dial, right?
Yeah. Well, especially look at the sequencing, that as much as we get into the specificity of this set of words versus that set of words, one of the bigger things that I tend to just, let's call it out, nerd out over, is the power of sequencing information in the right way. So I'll make up a scenario for this for the sake of doing it. But I want you to think of the first three steps, whether it's a video, whether it's you on a podcast, whether it's networking, which is still happening in the online age, not as much in person these days, but it's where people are spending too much money on X. I'm on a mission to help people to prevent this issue, because with the right information at the right time, and by asking the proper questions prior to even making the offer on the home, many couples don't know that they can save upwards of $3,000 or $4,000 in the process of buying their new house. And just imagine how they could better use that money in their growing family. My name is Adam Hires, and I help people but take note of the sequencing. You did not introduce yourself until you would establish the case. So the formula here is to invite people to care before you ever ask them to listen. You're now bringing them onto your side, and only then, once that case is made, boom, here's who I am, here's what I do.
Nice. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
So I jotted a few other things down in terms of, as while you were chatting at the beginning. And one of the things that I already heard that you're doing is definitely the mindset here, that of become the hub of communication, which really also feeds into the third point of be the expert, not the vendor. So something changes inside of our marketing message if we step into the formula that everyone else is selling this product. What I do differently is, and there it is. So the way that you're setting up an upcoming event, you are now positioning yourself as the hub of communication within that world, which I hinted at this earlier. Here's the Simpsons story, which this goes to the character voiced by Phil Hartman back in the day, the Troy McClure. Hi, you may remember me from that character on the show, which there was something to be learned about that. The nature of, you know me from this, or you may have seen me here. One of my earlier markets, and this is one that I'm no longer in, but the story still stands. I wanted to do a motivational assembly program for high schools, and I did that practically full time from like 2007 until about 2016, when I retired myself from that world, which eventually became the corporate program that I now do, which, fun fact, is the same program, just with different music, different audience. So the nature of it was, I knew that the principals were the decision makers, and principals being the quote head of the company, if we want to call it that in terms of the school, they get tons of mail, they get tons of offers, they get tons of marketing to them constantly. So if I fit into the world of sending the full color package with a lovely image of students and all this, I was the vendor. So the formula instead was to be the expert. Little bit of market research. I discovered here is the magazine that if you become a high school principal, you don't even have to subscribe to this thing. They just start sending you this magazine. And let's bring in another element of influence here. There's a strategy called a double bind, which the method of this is you introduce two choices while obviously leaving out the third, which is zero, not at all. So in this case, I reached out to that magazine and it was to simply say, hey, I do programs for schools. And I've been noticing that my conversations with principals are typically around issues involving increasing attendance at after school events, as well as just more of a business conversation. How do you handle contracts with outside vendors that don't fit into the county's policies? These are conversations I keep having with principals. Of those two, which one do you think your readers would find the most value in? Leaving out the third option of who the hell are you and why are you calling us? Immediately, we were into a conversation about one of those topics, and without having to formally pitch it, they were then going, yeah, how soon could you have that to us? We actually go to print next week. So suddenly now here was this full color article, not advertising, article in this paper, which you might imagine several thousand full color copies of that were printed, mailed out Troy McClure style to all these different principals in a radius going, hey, I'm sure you already saw this in the magazine. I wanted to make sure you had an extra copy. And the sales pitch was very simple. I do a program for schools. For more information, give me a call back. I was now the vendor. There was no DVD promo. There was no fancy stuff promoting what I do. Because let's call it out from my world. If I called up and said, hi, I'm a hypnotist. Can I mail you a DVD? They might have been nice and said yes. They wouldn't have watched it. Or even worse, hey, I do a hypnosis program for schools. Can I come in and, do things with your students? No, that sounds weird. No, instead, here's who I am. Here's what I do. And in that single move, I was immediately inside of their world. I was the peer, as opposed to the vendor trying to sell them something. So we're in a culture now where just standing up and saying, no, really, I'm good at this kind of hits deaf ears. Yeah. To show rather than tell becomes the ultimate formula there. So I'd say continue a lot of what you've been doing, and even better, just a little bit of an extra nuance. If you can sort of, we call this product pacing inside of the business influence program. If you can drop into the conversation, not just the call to action, as in visit this website or call this phone number, but also drop into the conversation the sort of map in terms of how people reach out to you. Oh, yeah, this was Susan who heard me on the podcast, and she went to the website and filled out this form, and she said. So we're layering into the storytelling the path that we want that person to take, but lead with that value, lead with that education, which I'd have to call out the obvious nuances. We've been looking at moving to a different state. All sorts of videos on YouTube are an amazing resource of this. Everything you should know before moving to fill in the blank. And inside of that, of course, that's the sales messaging for that real estate agent. You're connecting that rapport to that individual, except I'm moving down there, married to one. So thanks for the video.
Well, great tips here. And I tell you again, you can tell you're just you love what you do. You're a student of the game. What you're doing is working. I mean, you don't have, the thing is, in this conversation, I think that's really what you're saying as well. And your testament to it, you're leading with value, and everything you're saying, you're showing it. You're not having to say you're good. Like we could not say you're an author and all this other stuff. And if you just listen to you with all the value you're providing, it's like, yeah, this guy knows what he's doing. He definitely moves a dial. He knows how to, move the conversation, move the needle. And what I can say out there is that, listeners, please understand, it's not good enough. I know it's not good enough to listen to Jason one time here and be like, okay, it's all fixed. We can start to see that first stare and go, okay, hey, we can change these little nuances, but we know we're going to have to continue to practice this stuff. And, if sales dialogue is one of those things you need to work on, which really, honestly, all of us need to continue to work on it. is that it has to be a repetitive process. We have to have experts break down what we're saying. We have to have people, listen to those conversations sometimes and go, hey, this is what we could do better. Because, we're kidding ourselves if we don't think that we're missing out on sales that we could have if we're not really, really practicing the games. Like, well, no, I mean, I've been doing this for 10 years. Well, you can do stuff for 10 years and suck at it. Okay. I mean, 20 years. Okay. So
I
get
call
out
that,
there.
many people are successful in spite of their best efforts.
Right. So I want you to reach out to Jason if you feel like this is, he resonated with you. And, I'm not saying this because he's on here. I'm literally because, I'm sitting there looking, okay, is there things we can collaborate on and continue to do to provide value for people? And, he can help me along the way as well. And if there's any value I can provide him, this is real talk. When I listen to the high level guy like this, I'm like, man, I want to continue to associate myself with him and figure out what we can do together. But to reach out to him if there's anything, he may be able to help you with, reach out to him. If you need sales dialogue, you need something else that resonated with you, you have a question for him, reach out and get with them. So the best way to reach you, Jason, is?
Yeah, I'd point two places. So I do the Hypnotic Language Hacks podcast. So anywhere you find podcasts, you're going to find it. So just simply do a search for Hypnotic Language Hacks. It also publishes to YouTube. And then from there, head over to jasonlinett.com, which I always have to spell that. Linett, one N, two T's, no extra letters at the end though, Adam. You'll love this. I own all the wrong misspellings and they all point to the right place. So just do your best, jasonlinett.com. Once you're there, though, let me point to a free resource. Top of the page, there's a tab for business influence systems. And when you get to that page, that actually gives you an opportunity to watch a video that introduces these levels of hypnotic influence for business. But even better, while you're watching that, it's going to teach you the video influence process. How do you consistently churn out videos that nail that messaging? And you've already got the first 3 steps. There's 4 more to go on that there. So check that out, jasonlinett.com.
That's a great resource. I'm going to check it out as well. And again, I need to keep shoring up what I'm doing, and I'm nowhere near. That's the whole podcast, right? Hey, listen, bare naked truth. I'm failing. I'm not doing everything I need to do. If I was doing everything right, my business would be beyond what it is, right? And so I know I need to shore up things. I'm doing really well. I ran a good business in Kentucky and still are, and I'm still growing in Kentucky as we speak. But listen, if I was way better at a lot of these things that we're talking about, I'd have more deals. We can continue to shore up. We can continue to grow. Hit up Jason. Please do me a favor, guys out there, is hit me a review. I would really appreciate it. I want to continue to get this out there. I'm on a mission, right, to really help you out there and provide as much value as I can. This is not a sales thing where I'm like, listen, let's funnel into hires coaching right now to kind of tell everybody and Jason where I'm at. I'm like, okay, I'm going to kind of ground root back a little bit and go, okay, this is how I'm going to grow my business. I'm still coaching people, but it's really like you got to beat down my door to get a coaching opportunity from me right now, because I have coaching with inside Sierra Pacific Mortgage that I get paid on, and I'm coaching some. And right now I'm trying to go, hey, how can I go back to ground zero, grow my business and relearn even some things and grow myself. So this is not about, hey, listen, funneling you in the system. This is about getting the word out and other people growing their business. So
I'll tell you what I love about that. The book you keep picking up, Work Smart Business.
Yeah.
The whole framework of that was to say, okay, so here's everything I've done in a career where basically as a hypnotist, most of my conversation doesn't begin until I go, look, I'm not going to make you bark like a dog or cluck like a chicken. Not that I know any hypnotist who's ever actually done that, oddly enough, but it's where here were the challenges that I had and here's what I did. So everything is either a setback or an opportunity. And the only difference is how we label it. Right. So I look at the nature of, I tend to thrive exactly on what you just talked about, to go, what's the scene again, movie references since you went there already. The first Ghostbusters movie, when they find the fire pole, and I think it's Dan Aykroyd's character who goes, "We're keeping this." It's that dynamic of what am I going to do with this before I was ready to. And this next advice isn't a match for everybody, but you're clearly doing it too, which is perfect. I signed the big scary office lease to go, the hell am I going to do with all of this? And I found a way to make it work because it brought in that level of tenacity to go, I have to make it work. I mentioned doing work with schools. There's a fundraiser program I briefly offered, and there's a cool learning lesson that comes out of this where they could either get the show for free and we'd split the profit based on the ticket sales, or they would just buy the show and keep all the money after the ticket sales after that. The ones who went in going, it'd be nice to, earn a little bit of money for whatever student event, would sell maybe 40 tickets. Not good. The groups that would just buy the show out and then sell tickets on their own would be the ones calling me up the day before going, hey, we have too many people coming. It won't fit in the auditorium. Can we do it in the gym? It's like, if you have to. So the nature of putting ourselves into that position where we have to figure it out. And just to borrow from some of the classics of hypnotic communication, Adam, there's no failure, there's feedback.
Yeah.
When you label it that way, Thomas Edison with his light bulb, he discovered all the ways to make the light bulb not work before he found the one that did.
Right.
But the result of that was he knew how to duplicate it then.
That is awesome advice because if you're a mortgage loan officer out there, I mean, real estate and whatever, and you're thinking about adding to a team, right? Like, once you say, okay, I'm going to bring another person on a team, you find a way to fill more loans in the pipeline because I got to feed them, right? If you're a giving nature, like I am, right. And trying to grow, I've got to feed them. I've got to feed their family. And then you find out a way because, okay, what can we implement? What can we implement? What can we do? So keep burning the ships, keep, putting, the people in place and then find out a way to still, your line is fill the auditorium, right? Because buy the tickets out and then find a way to fill it up, and then guess what? You're gonna crush it. So
Lorne Michaels was Saturday Night Live. Whether we're ready or not, the show goes live at 11:30. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I talk about. I've had clients, they're stuck, and it's like, just set the event and then figure out a way to fill it up. I mean, and if you set the event, you're gonna figure out a way to get it done, and that's just what you got to do. So, I mean, I love it. Definitely love to link back up with you, Jason, and, get you in front of as many people as I can continue to do, because you can tell that you're good, great free resource. Make sure you guys check that out. I'm going to check that out. You can look up at Amazon, Jason Linett, and he has I think you have 3 books on Amazon.
Actually, the one on there.
One.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm so bad. I do have the 1 on there.
But Adam, what you're saying is it's so good that one book has the quality of 3.
There you go. See,
okay, we'll take it.
Yes, it's good though. Yeah. So Brick, because I know I looked it up. I was like, okay, I got to get that. And so I've been diving in that. I've listened to your podcast. It's really good. And you had the double bind on there you were talking about as well, and some good examples. But check them out. And if y'all need anything from me, let me know. Reach out. And I'd love to help you in any way I can. Jason, I appreciate you.
Awesome being here. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Remember, guys, limited risks equals limited income.